I remember the night Abeni gave birth, as if it happened just yesterday. It was the kind of night that made the elders sit by their fires, muttering about omens and restless spirits. The sky, thick with storm clouds, swallowed the moon whole, and the air carried a heavy stillness, broken only by the distant cry of a hyena. Abeni had always been different. She was a quiet woman, gentle in her ways, yet her presence was commanding. Her pregnancy had been the subject of many whispers in Ukuta. The other women noticed it first. Her belly, though large, never moved. No restless kicks, no shifting from within. A child that does not stir in the womb, the village midwife, Mama Olabisi, had said, is a child touched by spirits. But Abeni had not worried. Every night, she sang to her unborn child, her soft voice weaving through the cracks of her mud hut, filling the darkness with melodies only she could understand. Then came that fateful night. The storm arrived first, shaking the trees and sending dust into the air. The wind howled through the village, rattling doors and extinguishing lamps. When Abeni's labor pains began, the women rushed to her hut, carrying warm water and cloths, their faces tight with worry. Mama Olabisi took her place beside Abeni, her old hand steady despite the unease in her eyes. Abeni screamed as the pain ripped through her, her body drenched in sweat. But there was no cry of a newborn, no first breath to break the tension in the air. Instead, when Mama Olabisi pulled the child from Abeni's womb, the hut fell into complete, terrifying silence. I was there. I saw it with my own eyes. It was not a baby she held, but a small wooden coffin. The women gasped, stumbling back, their hands flying to their mouths. Someone whispered a prayer. Mama Olabisi trembled as she placed the tiny coffin on the ground. It was made of dark wood, polished and smooth, its sides carved with strange symbols. Abeni, weak and drenched in sweat, lifted her head. "Where is my child?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. No one answered. No one dared to touch the coffin. The air inside the hut grew thick, pressing against our chests. Then it happened. The coffin moved. A scratching sound, faint at first, then louder, more frantic. The lid creaked, opening inch by inch. And then we saw him. A child sat inside, his skin pale as the morning mist, his eyes darker than the deepest part of the river. He did not cry. He did not blink. He simply sat there, watching. Abeni reached for him, but the moment her fingers brushed his skin, the hut filled with an icy wind. The fire flickered and died. The ground beneath us felt like it was pulling away. Then, the child lifted his tiny hand and pointed at Mama Olabisi. She stiffened, her body going rigid as stone. Her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed without a sound. The women screamed, scrambling out of the hut. I was frozen, unable to move, my legs refusing to obey me. The child stepped out of the coffin, his small feet touching the ground. The very air around him seemed to shudder. Abeni, despite everything, held out her arms. "My son," she whispered. The child turned, his eerie gaze meeting hers. Then for the first time, he smiled. It was not a child's smile, it was knowing, ancient. The villagers gathered outside, their voices rising in fear. "He's not one of us," the chief declared. "He cannot stay." But Abeni would not leave him. Holding her son close, she ran into the darkness of the forest, the village's torches flickering behind her. We watched until she was swallowed by the trees, her presence fading into the whispers of the night. No one spoke of her after that, but sometimes on the coldest nights, When the wind moves just right, you can hear a child's laughter drifting from the trees. And the elders, though they never admit it, still glance over their shoulders, wary of the things that lurk between our world and the next. The sun had barely begun its descent when whispers filled the air in the village of Nyandoro. The elders gathered beneath the ancient baobab tree, their faces marked with a mixture of curiosity and fear. It was about Nia, the young woman who had disappeared for 3 days and returned with a story that no one could comprehend. Nia had gone to fetch water from the river when she heard a voice calling her name. She turned, expecting to see another villager, but there was no one. The voice called again, this time from the dense thicket beyond the river. Against her better judgment, she stepped forward. The moment she crossed the riverbank, the air grew cold, and a strange mist surrounded her. When she tried to turn back, the path behind her had vanished. For 3 days, she wandered in an unfamiliar world where the trees whispered secrets and shadows moved without bodies. She met a woman draped in flowing blue robes, her eyes glowing like the moon. "You have been chosen," the woman said. "There is something the village must remember." When Nia finally reappeared, exhausted and confused, she carried a bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside was an old wooden carving of the first chief of Nyandoro, a relic that had been lost for generations. The elders gasped in recognition. The chief had prophesied that when the village lost its way, the land itself would send a messenger to restore the past. "What does this mean?" the villagers murmured. The eldest among them, Baba Ose, stepped forward. "It means that our ancestors are watching. We must return to the old ways, honor the land and respect the spirits. Nia has brought back the sign." That night, the village held a great ceremony. Drums echoed into the night and flames danced in the fire pits as the villagers paid homage to their ancestors. Nia, once an ordinary young woman, had become the bridge between the seen and unseen. Days turned into months and Nyandoro flourished once again. Crops grew bountifully, the river flowed abundantly, and the village remained at peace. Nia never heard the voice again, but sometimes when the wind rustled the trees just right, she felt a presence watching over her. And so, the legend of Nia and the lost carving was passed down through generations. A reminder that the spirits never truly leave. They only wait for the right person to listen.